The top business stories live from the Sky News headquarters. Thames Water's £3 billion bailout survives as a legal challenge is dismissed by the Court of Appeal. A blow for the Chancellor as the OECD downgrades global economic growth, including the UK's, because of Donald Trump's tariffs. Plus, Beijing's new plans to get people to spend more amid growing concerns about that trade war with the United States. A very good afternoon on this Monday Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey. We're going to begin with the UK's biggest water supplier, that is, of course, Thames Water, as it survived a legal challenge to its financial restructuring. The Liberal Democrat MP Charlie Maynard and a group of Thames Water creditors had appealed against a £3 billion loan for the company. Without the loan, Thames Water said it would have run out of money on the 24th of March. Well, our business and economics correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan, has the very latest.
This is Thames Water, the beleaguered water utility, which has been struggling with its £16 billion debt pile. It said last month that it would run out of money at the end of March if it didn't secure a £3 billion loan from its most senior class of creditors. That's a group of hedge funds and investment firms. The High Court, it approved that plan. It meant that Thames Water said it would get a bit of breathing room, allowing it to seek some new equity investment. However, it was a controversial decision, and a group of campaigners led by the Liberal Democrat MP Charlie Maynard were arguing that a special administration was still the best outcome for Thames Water. And if that £3 billion loan didn't get approved, then Thames Water would have fallen into a special administration, which is akin to a temporary nationalisation. But these campaigners were arguing that more debt couldn't be the correct answer for Thames Water. It's got a debt servicing bill of £900 million a year, and this new loan would have come with an interest rate of 9.75%. So they were arguing, well, that would ultimately be a cost that would be borne by customers. Now, they also said that in the long run, a special administration, a temporary nationalisation, would be better for the company and would be better for customers, because although it would cost the taxpayer money in the short term, when that company was then sold back into the private sector, the government could recoup all of its costs. That, however, was contested, with others arguing that it would actually cost the taxpayer more in the long run, because there's no guarantee what kind of money you'd be able to fetch for the company. A second class of creditors, known as Class B creditors, were also railing against this plan, and their legal representatives have been in the Court of Appeal challenging that High Court decision. They stood to be wiped out under this plan, and they accused the Class A creditors of employing predatory tactics to try and milk the company for cash. The Court of Appeal, however, today dismissed those appeals, meaning the restructuring will go ahead. The company said in a statement that customer bills under this plan won't be going up. However, they plan to use a large chunk of that £3 billion loan, about £1.5 billion, to appeal an Ofwat decision to limit customer price rises to 35% over the next 5 years. They actually want more money. They want bills to go up by 53%, which would take the average bill to £677, and that's exactly what the likes of Charlie Maynard and other campaigners are railing against.
Well, the other big business story today is that there's been a blow for the Chancellor, with the OECD downgrading the UK's economic growth next year. It's the latest economic outlook, and it's titled Steering Through Uncertainty, which is certainly one way of describing the global economy at the moment. The OECD said that global GDP will slow from 3.2% in 2024 to 3% in 2026, due in part to the impact of those Donald Trump tariffs. Well, our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has the details.
This is us starting to get the first sense of what these tariffs might well mean for the global economy. So the OECD, this Paris-based organisation, kind of club of rich countries, they produce these every 6 months, a big assessment on how the world is doing. We'll get the IMF's version of this in a few weeks, or indeed a couple of months' time. But the assessment is, I mean, the UK is going to be weaker as a result, and obviously it's not just the UK. So you've got the UK downgraded, the US downgraded even more because as a result of these tariffs, you've got a big impact on the cost of goods coming into the US. And the same thing for the Eurozone as well. But I think the difficult thing, the particularly awkward thing for Rachel Reeves, obviously, is she has her spring statement coming up. The Office for Budget Responsibility, so they are the organisation that produces the official forecast for the UK, they will be incorporating some attempt to try and measure what the impact of tariffs is going to be. I mean, frankly, though, at the moment, it's worth saying, most economists are kind of guessing. You know, no one knows, A, precisely how deep the impact of this is going to be, and B, perhaps even more urgently, just what Donald Trump is going to do, you know, tomorrow, let alone kind of next week or next month with these tariffs.
Or even when he does something that he won't then change his mind within 12 hours.
Precisely, but they have an impact. That's the point. If you're a British company and you're making steel or you're making aluminium products and you're sending them into America, then all of a sudden, you know, margins are really thin in that sector. All of a sudden, 25% potentially blows you out of the water. And there's still a lot of this money, a lot of this trade is happening right now. So this will have an impact. And we're now at that point, aren't we, where it's starting to
And isn't it having an impact just at the moment in terms of, like, companies are already stockpiling on the possibility of tariffs?
Yeah, they're stockpiling, and they're stockpiling in the US as well. So they've been pulling in lots of goods from overseas they thought were going to be tariffed. You know, you've got gold flowing to America in a faster rate than we've ever seen before because people are worried that is gold going to face tariffs, let alone other things as well. So all of this is happening. This is the OECD with their first assessment of what this is going to mean. And it's kind of what you'd expect. Weaker growth, so we are going to be poorer as a result. Higher inflation, so you've got higher inflation, particularly in the US, less so here, but higher inflation because this pushes up the costs of those goods. And it's generally speaking not good. And of course, that has a bearing for Rachel Reeves because those growth forecasts then feed into the ones that she gets, the official ones from the OBR. They then feed into how much extra room she has to borrow, which in turn determines how much in the way of, you know, these welfare cuts that we're talking about right now you're going to have and how much money do you have for defence. So it's all important.
Now, AI assistants like ChatGPT, Copilot and DeepSeek have become familiar names in recent times, but how much are people using them in their everyday lives? Well, new research from Adobe has found that nearly 8 out of 10 customers say they can use AI assistants with confidence, and more than a third have been using them while shopping online. Well, let's speak to Vivek Pandya, who is lead analyst at Adobe. Very good afternoon to you. They have become ubiquitous, haven't they, these AI chatbots? Just give us a range, if you like, in the areas that UI and everyone else may well already be interacting with them.
Yeah, so I think from our research, you know, we looked at a survey that gave us a sense of the trust levels. But when we look at our data of visits and traffic to retail sites, financial sites and travel sites, those are up between 500 to 700% year on year. And it's really indicative of consumers feeling very comfortable using these AI assistants to help them make certain decisions around shopping or booking travel. And that's really driving an influx of momentum to these sites. So it's really emerged as a growth vector in terms of driving traffic to these types of sites.
It is indeed, but people do get frustrated with them, don't they? Because they're good, but they're still very far from perfect.
I would say it's very much an adoption curve in terms of using these platforms and then getting comfortable and being able to prompt them with the right sorts of questions that will get the answers that users are looking for. And we've seen pretty staggering improvement when we look at things like conversion rate. So likelihood to purchase has gone up about 89% since last summer. So while we are in sort of early days in terms of users becoming familiar and trying out different use cases with these AI assistant platforms, the progress has been pretty staggering. And ultimately, that's going to be an important area for retailers to consider in how they position their offerings so that these AI assistant bots showcase them as an option for users.
Well, the interesting here, Vivek, though, is that actually, and I was reading an article just today about how we now think of, or companies at least seem to think of, customer service as a lack of friction, frictionless, if you like, rather than that normal human interaction. And isn't that the kind of problem with the chatbots, is that they may be a bit more efficient, or they will probably get to that stage than a human being, but can they replicate the kind of conversation, the warmth that a customer, the humanity, if you like, that a customer might want in interaction with a shop or indeed any other form of customer service?
I think when we look in the sort of online landscape and how consumers have been using different modes of ideation to understand what sort of products they need, how they purchase, we've seen them use things like search in the past. We've seen them use social media and advertising there, and ultimately that's where we see Gen AI assistants emerging as sort of a platform source for this type of traffic. So you're going to have consumers experience different types of engagement once they're on these retail sites themselves or the financial sites. But there's a level of ideation and thinking that they're doing around what products they need or what financial instruments they need to be considering, summarizing. And that's some pre-research work that we're seeing emerge with these Gen AI platforms. And we're seeing consumers really trust them. More than 3/4 of consumers are saying they have a trust and ease with those results.
And just very finally on this, where are we in the UK? Because I know we're, I think, per capita, the biggest online spenders when it comes to retail. Are we kind of ahead of the curve relative to most of the rest of the world?
Well, I would say in terms of share, UK is quite strong. About 1 out of every £4 is spent online. But we see a lot of momentum in Asia. In India, we're slowly getting to a point where 1 out of every $2, when we kind of convert that, and about 50% share is going to be spent through online in India versus offline. So those are the broader trends. What we're seeing is emerging in.
OK, Vivek Pandya, thank you very much indeed for joining us there from Adobe. Thank you. Now, let's have a look at how the markets are doing this afternoon. Let's speak to Anna MacDonald, Investment Manager at Albury Capital Management. Very good afternoon to you, Anna. Let's talk about US retail sales. They're doing pretty good. Another sign that maybe we've been over-egging the lack of resilience in the US economy.
Well, I think there's a few ways of looking at it. The US retail sales came in positive numbers, so they're up 0.2%, but they were expected to be up 0.6%. And also January's number was revised down from -0.9 to -1.2%. So I think putting that together with some of the news that we're getting out of companies in the US, for example, Delta Airlines last week really revised down their expectations from what they're seeing in the US consumer. So I think it is actually probably a bit weaker than we were hoping for, and perhaps the US consumer is sort of seeing what's going on in the markets, what's happening geopolitically. You've been talking about tariffs before. That's all coming home to roost a bit.
Yeah, it really is, and it's interesting, isn't it, that Donald Trump's, I think, kind of net favourability when it comes to the economy has slipped quite a lot in recent weeks. And in many ways, Anna, these become self-fulfilling, don't they? Consumer confidence falls if people think the economy's not heading in the right direction.
Yeah, the US economy is 2/3 driven by the consumer. So if the consumer starts feeling a bit hesitant, then yes, that does start to create that kind of that extra economic weakness on top of that. But I mean, the US economy has still been very robust. The Federal Reserve makes an interest rate decision this week. They're expected to keep rates on hold, but they have got some powder dry that they could cut that in the future if they do see economic weakness coming through.
And let's talk about interest rates. Of course, we've got the Bank of England and the Fed making decisions this week.
Yes, both expected to stay where they were. The Bank of England last cut only last month, and the Federal Reserve has cut 1% since September. So they're anticipated to both wait and see. And what are they waiting to see? They're waiting to see how quickly inflation does manage to fall, and how the economy really copes with all the news that we're getting around tariffs and all the different things that are really destabilizing companies and consumers at the moment.
OK, and as always, appreciate your time this afternoon live there from Edinburgh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, China has announced a new plan to get people to spend more. It comes amid concerns in Beijing about the looming trade war with Donald Trump. Well, our Asia correspondent, Nicole Johnson, has more from Beijing.
They announced this on Sunday. It's things like a childcare subsidy, encouraging people to go and use all of their holiday leave and spend it on tourism all over the country. And the reason this is so important, of course, is because China is the world's second largest economy, and we're talking about 1.4 billion people here. So anytime the government makes these announcements, it gets a huge amount of attention. Now, another one of the 30 that was really interesting was the government wants to try and increase the incomes and the pensions of farmers and people living in rural areas. And that itself is about 500 million people. So clearly China sees that there's a great deal of untapped potential out there, people in rural areas who they also want to get spending money, because this domestic consumption is one of the biggest issues facing the Chinese economy right now.
And Nicole, we've got new economic data today. What does that give us a sense of where the Chinese economy is?
Exactly. So this is figures for January and February. The 2 months are put together because of the Chinese New Year's holiday. So we had consumer spending up 4%, factory output up 6%. So that's a pretty good result for China. But interestingly, the real issue, of course, is the property crisis. So new spending on housing is still down around 4%. And it goes to show what a drag on the economy that continues to be, with unfinished housing, huge swathes of property that just hasn't been bought. And that is the real reason why there is so little confidence among so many Chinese to get out and spend money, to take their savings and go on a holiday, because they've had to live through this property crisis for the last few years.
OK, you're watching Business Live here on Sky News on this Monday afternoon. Coming up next, how dog therapy is being used to boost employees' well-being in the workplace. You won't want to miss that. Up next.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky Security and Defence Editor.
The reality of life under Russian fire.
People don't want to leave, even though help is here to evacuate them. They say they want to sort out their belongings first. It's absolute chaos.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety, as Russian drones will be trying to find this position.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming. I've been covering Russia's full-scale war since it began, witnessing the terror and the trauma.
When rockets fall, I try to hide my head under my toys.
Illustrating Ukraine's lost childhood, hopes and dreams framed by war.
Conflict in the Middle East is another major focus.
An incredibly dangerous moment.
We saw the missiles streaking across the sky. We saw the intercept going up, and then we saw the explosions when the intercepts were successful. With global threats rising, I also explored defence and security in the UK and across NATO.
This US aircraft carrier is operating in European waters in a deliberate show of force.
This is routine training for NATO, but should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Tucked away in the National Archives are some of the UK's old defence plans.
The scale of this bunker underlines how seriously governments took the threat of nuclear attack and global conflict. Should allies listen to Vladimir Putin's sabre-rattling?
No, they shouldn't, and they don't.
Sky News, the full story first.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
$1,500 movies? I don't want this flight to end. Fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back to Sky News on this Monday afternoon. We're just going to show you some pictures from Buckingham Palace that have come in to us here at Sky, and that is the King meeting, or he will be the King about to meet Mark Carney, the new Canadian Prime Minister, of course, who got sworn in at the end of last week. Mark Carney had been in Paris alongside Emmanuel Macron a little earlier on today. Here is in Buckingham Palace meeting with King Charles III. Of course, King Charles III is the head of state of Canada, Mark Carney the head of government. And we also know that Mark Carney is likely to meet with Keir Starmer later on this afternoon in Downing Street as well. So that's the new Canadian Prime Minister. It may be a temporary position given the fact that there is an election in Canada later on this year, meeting King Charles at Buckingham Palace this afternoon. Now, according to new research by PwC, 1 in 4 young people has considered leaving the workforce in the past year, with mental health issues often cited as the most common factor. Well, one company attempting to help employees is the Cuddle Club, which uses dog therapy to improve well-being in the workplace. Well, here to explore more is Annika Johnson, who joins me now with Chubbs, her French bulldog. A very good afternoon to you. Look at how cute Chubbs is. Just talk us through what led you to setting up this company and what you're aiming to do.
So I went through a very stressful time myself. I was working in the entertainment industry, very burnt out, fast-paced, and I really hit a wall. So I am one of those statistics that definitely knows that stress in the workplace is a real issue. And through my health issues, it really affected me both mentally and physically. And then the amazing Chubbs, who I call my natural born healer, came into my life and changed my whole life, to be honest, with work, but just my day-to-day as well.
And there is evidence, quite a lot of evidence, isn't there, to show that, physical contact with a dog, a good old cuddle, does help lower stress levels, does essentially help people's, day-to-day mental well-being.
It does indeed. So just 10 minutes cuddling a dog actually lowers your blood pressure, your heart rate, and also releases happy hormones, including oxytocin, serotonin. And honestly, I know having Chubbs, it makes a massive difference. But when we go out into the workplace, we certainly see the benefits that it has on employees and teams all over the country.
And also, this is something that's been taken up by, some people at home thinking this is not terribly serious, but actually there are lots of big companies who seem to understand that and are working with you and others in their businesses, in their offices, to try and lower stress levels with dogs in the office.
Absolutely. So we work with companies such as Google, Amazon Logistics, YouTube, L'Oreal. There's so many companies that see the benefits of dog therapy and understand it's not just a gimmick. Yes, the dogs are absolutely cute, but there's scientific benefits and studies and evidence that really do make a difference in the workplace.
And just very finally, Annika, at the end of the day, I'm sure people are loving our conversation, but they probably really just want to see more of Chubbs. Can you show us a little bit more and maybe give him a hug from me, if that's okay?
Sure. No worries. Do you want to get in the camera? Yeah?
I think he's 9 years old, is that right?
Yes, he's just turned 9.
Very, very cute indeed. Well, good luck with everything. Best of luck with the business. And if you ever want to bring him into the Sky News office, he's very, very welcome.
No worries. I'll take it from that.
OK, thank you very much, Annika. Okay. And Chubbs there, the 9-year-old French bulldog. OK, that is it from me on Business Live for today. Coming up next, it is the News Hour with Mark Austin, including more on the government's welfare reforms. We're expecting a statement from the Work and Pension Secretary, Liz Kendall, tomorrow in Parliament. It's been pretty controversial, but will be a big moment for this Labour government's analysis. Coming up with Mark on that next. As I say, I'll see you tomorrow, though, at 11:30. Until then, have a good evening and a very goodbye to you all. Bye-bye.